Hi everybody, it's Elise Lonsdale from Data Australasia, and in today's video I would like to talk to you about Apple products.
Data Australasia, guided by lived experience, led by you.
And a Happy New Year to everybody, and to you too, Kylie. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Apple products. Here we go. Back in 2009, I first saw my iPhone 3GS, or an iPhone 3GS, which had on this a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. No more bolting on screen readers to the end of operating systems like we had to do with NVDA and JAWS. Out of the box, a Mac, an Apple Mac, and an iPhone all had a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. I think there was a previous older version of the Mac OS that did talk, but that's all by the by now, because we've certainly got into the day and age of standard accessibility built in, and that's revolutionized the way that we do access tech. And even it's pushed Microsoft into developing the narrator screen reader for Windows just a little bit better than it once was, because they always had to deal with JAWS and NVDA not to really invade that space. But Apple come along with their products, and they did. And they have revolutionized the way that we in the blindness and low vision community access information. So much so it's led to a number of Apple Macs being bought, and I'll come to that later because it is a little bit of a contentious issue, with VoiceOver on the Mac in more recent years being somewhat left behind. But we're talking about Apple products in general today. They have, back in 2006, I think it was, if I remember my Walter Isaacson, Steve Jobs book well enough, they started developing a glass tablet with what they call a multi-touch display on it, which means that people could just do finger gestures on the display to have things happen, like, look at their notes, look at their home app, look at their news app, all sorts of really cool things just by doing certain gestures on a flat screen. There were some earlier versions of tablets that used styluses, keyboards, flipping around the screen that I saw Windows run on back in that time, but nothing as versatile as something you could pick up like an iPad. Even to the point the iPad had a curve under it where you could just pick it up, especially the iPad 1. Bit harder with these newer form factor iPads, especially now that they've got the squared off design. This one still has the round design, but Steve Jobs wanted his tablet to be something you pick up and just use. And they did a lot of research and development back at Apple Corporation to decide what's their most appropriate size and shape. Now, I think it was around about 9 or 10 inches on the diagonal. Can't remember now because there's been so many iterations of the iPad, many of which probably would never have turned up if Steve Jobs was still alive, because he wanted really fewer models and he wanted to get it right in one hit. But since Steve Jobs is gone and Tim Cook's running the company, they've got iPads at just about every size. Mini iPads are still the standard form factor. The iPad Pro, in a smaller version, the 11-inch version, and the 12.9-inch version, which is my preference, which is this little baby here, complete with its magic. In actual fact, it's not magic. It is the magic, actually. The magic keyboard and case. So it turns the iPad now more or less into almost a laptop experience. But still, once off, quite versatile and still easy to maneuver.
Wednesday, the 10th of December. Status bar item.
Thank you, VoiceOver. So back in 2007, 2006, they stopped the development on the iPad for the production of a phone. They thought, why don't we put this wonderful glass multi-touch display into a phone and revolutionize the way we use the phone? Because the phone, there were so many phones with little keyboards on them that you had to hunt and peck with a little stick. You had to use a little stylus or use your fingernail, and then there were the PDAs, the Blackberries and all that sort of stuff, and they were just too cumbersome to use. Too many of these funny little things with all these little buttons all over them, the Nokias, all the sorts of I think back then I had a Sony Ericsson for a while. It's very difficult to use, and of course back in those days for us vision impaired people, we had to use Talks under the Symbian operating system. So, it was a mess, a bit of a mess, again, bolting on a screen reader. We had to use a screen reader under Symbian. That's what we did. So it was still quite messy. Now, the first iPhone didn't have VoiceOver in it, and I don't believe the second one ever did either. The first one or two models didn't actually make it to Australia, and it was only going to be sold through, the AT&T network in America. Well, of course, as time went on, all the networks got access to them. And I first got my first iPhone actually in 2011, just after I was so successful with my purchase of my iPad. Geez, it was good. I just changed the way I did everything, just overnight, just gone. Just everything changed. Back then, there was always this, because of the security and the way it was designed, there was always this hassle of getting information from, say, your computer, your PC, your Windows PC to your Apple device. I just figured out, let's see if they've got a Dropbox app in the App Store, and sure enough, they did. So I got around the problem within weeks of having my first iOS device, not even that, because it was a hassle. Now you've got Apple continuity between Macs and the iOS devices, which is something I cannot live without. Every time I get on a Windows machine now, I think, good God, how am I going to get information back off this thing over to the Mac and over to the iPhone? Well, again, good old Dropbox to the rescue. So, yeah, that's my story into Macs. Now, the reason I'm talking about Macs, so I've just spent 5 minutes warming you up to this, is because of the Access technology built in. And many people have, just about every blindie I know has an iPhone. Just about. Not all, but many do. Those who definitely want to have smartphones definitely have an iPhone because, as you know, they talk. All I could do is turn on VoiceOver, and you can even turn on VoiceOver with Siri. Turn on VoiceOver.
Okay, VoiceOver is now on.
And this is my older iPhone because it looks really nice. I'm actually using my new iPhone as a continuity camera to do this actual recording. But I like this because what Steve Jobs wanted was a nice, shiny edge to their device. This is that squared off edge. I really love it. The newer phones are made out of titanium and have a more matte finish. I do like this stainless steel gold. I like the gold finish, or silver for those who have got silver phones. But we've started VoiceOver. It's glass. There's been plenty of aluminium and glass phones that have been sandwiched between two pieces of glass. And if you read the Walter Isaacson, Steve Jobs book, you'll know why Apple do this. It's because, his father taught him, his adopted father taught Steve Jobs, when building something, you build it to be good on the inside and the outside. So go have a read if you haven't already. Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. All right, so we've got all this wonderful technology. It looks good. It looks smart. Yes, it's expensive, but it works for the most part. And yes, I have to say that since Steve Jobs has died, I think they have fallen a little bit into the trap of trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying to keep up with Android, and to have a new phone every year and a new operating system every year, just that wouldn't have flown with Steve Jobs. I'm sure it wouldn't have. But we have that now because of the marketers. As a result, we have a lot of variances now, a lot more variant in the quality of the operating system, sadly. And, let's be honest, Tahoe isn't their best effort, which is the current operating system. It's really reminiscent of the days of High Sierra, in my opinion. So every now and again, you'll get one that's a bit dodgy. But we blindies love it because it gives us the Access technology built in. Screen magnification's built in. And I'll do a video and demonstrate all that for people who are sighted and who are not familiar with it. I'll do a how-to video shortly on how all this works. But it means we don't have to build in, and we don't have to go out and buy Access technology such as JAWS, which you do for Windows, that can well outprice up to 10 times the price of your laptop computer. To get a fresh copy of JAWS that you haven't had a license for in the past can cost upwards of $3,000, which can be up to, several times more than what the original base model computer's worth. And then it attaches onto the end of the operating system. We're fortunate in recent years that there's a lot more collaboration between Freedom Scientific and Microsoft when it comes to making these Access technologies work, but you are still bolting on a third-party product onto the end of already something that exists. Similarly with NVDA, Narrator comes built in, but Narrator's a very, very basic screen reader compared to what these others can do. So, as a result, the blind community have lent towards Apple because, for the most part, it is much more reliable than Android. Android's got the same problem as Windows. The Android operating system has to operate on multiple devices, whether it be a Google Pixel, a Samsung Z Fold, or other brands, some of them quite cheap. So the kernel is going to be compiled for who knows what operating, what bit of hardware. Whereas Apple, the kernel's compiled for the hardware because they're in control of the hardware as well. So that's why you'll have a more stable experience on an Apple device than what you will on an Android device. It's pretty simple. So there it is, guys. So as a result of this access technology being built into the Apple products, it then brings us to a question for funding. And this is a contentious point with some of the people I know in the blind community, but I have always held firm that if the NDIS or other funding bodies can fund JAWS, which can be upwards of $3,000, or can fund a reading machine, which is in essential a one-trick pony for $4,000, $5,000, or even $6,000, when you can get an app for an iPhone that does the reading machine for you, OCRs text or even magnifies text, and in many cases, the superiority of these cameras and the displays that you see on these iPhones outclasses the myriad of portable video magnifiers, reading machines and stuff that is out there in the marketplace for the blindness fraternity. If the NDIS can fund one-trick ponies, why can't they fund an iPhone that might start at $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 Australian, that not only will do all of the above, will also give you guidance with GPS, even with the inbuilt Maps app, or you can install specialized apps like Ariadne GPS and a number of others. You can install AI apps such as Be My Eyes and Seeing AI. And by the way, both of those apps are free. You can use it as a video magnifier, and I do, as I've mentioned in other videos when I'm tutoring people in touch typing. That now comes as a magnification app that's built in, again, free. And what apps you do pay for, by and large, it's not much at all. There are some reading apps such as Voice Dream Reader and Speech Central and Speechify that have gone to subscription models, but by comparison, they're much, much cheaper than the one-trick ponies. So however, or whatever you decide to do with the Apple Watch, or your Apple iPhone, your Apple iPad, and now your Apple Watch, a lot of it can be done for free. Oh, and by the way, NDIS, you can even ring your mummy about it. Hello, how are you? You can't do that on a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 reading machine. And loneliness is a very big part of a person with a disability's life. Isolation, not being able to get out and go out with your friends, not being able to get a job, hold down a job. It causes isolation and loneliness. So why not use your device to get on the phone, talk to your mum, talk to your dad, talk to your auntie, or even, jump on a Discord group or jump on a WhatsApp group. Do Facebook. Whatever takes your fancy, you can do all that on an iPhone for a fraction of the price than what you would get from some of these one-trick ponies. So if the NDIS is out there thinking, we've got to cut down on expenditure, great, I'm all for that. That's one way they can do it. Simple mathematics doesn't lie. I'm Elise Lonsdale. Thanks for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
For fast, efficient access technology training and support, call Elise Lonsdale from Australia 0448 966 533. That's 0448 966 533. Or from New Zealand on 027 315 2858. That's 027 315 2858. Data Australasia. Guided by lived experience, led by you.